I don't know how many of you have been into the valley, the Shenandoah Valley, but I'm sure there are places right here in this area where at dawn in August, it's very foggy and misty, and the mist hovers by the ground. And here were these men moving cannons into place, facing the cavalry, or facing the wagons. They didn't give it a second thought. Well, the first gun that goes in, he maneuvers perfectly, exactly the way Mosby wants it, in exactly the position he wants it. The second gun, they're moving the thing in. Well, sure enough, they hit a nest of yellow jackets. And here these guys are grizzled veterans, okay? And they're just running for their lives, swatting bees away from them. Eventually, the bees calm down, and they're able to move the gun into another position, like another couple feet over. And on Mosby's order, now, of course, the 350 men are mounted quiet. They're going up behind a berm, behind a hill. And these wagons are maybe a quarter of a mile away, if that, on the other side of the creek. And at that time of day, the Teamsters are up, and you smell food being fixed for breakfast, and there's smoke coming up, and fires being lit, and the Teamsters are going around hitching up their horses, getting ready for a big day. Mosby said to his men, "You will not attack until you hear the third round go off." On his command, Mosby fires the first cannon. Boom! Goes off. It blows off the head of a mule. Hallelujah! And all of a sudden, as you can imagine, a 12-pound deploying cannonball makes a lot of noise. And all of a sudden, these people are like, "What in the world? Where did that come from?" There's excitement building. Second gun, boom, goes off. Hits a wagon, and the wagon falls over. And the horses are screaming, and the men are jumping around like, "What in the world is going on?" Finally, boom, the third round goes off, and 350 maniacs come flying over this berm at top speed. And if you're on a horse and you only weigh 125 or 150 pounds, you're on a horse. You can cover, at a gallop, you can cover about 150 yards in seconds. So these guys, and each of them had a pair of Colts, six-shot pistols. And these guys are on top of the Federals who are absolutely, totally caught off guard. They had no idea. And the ones who had any presence of mind fired one round and ran. And at the end of that, I won't call it a fight, but at the end of that experience, Mosby had burned 75 wagons, had captured about 500 mules and horses, and had taken 200 Union prisoners. The next day, the people from the town went into the campsite, or to the site there, and they had enough food to last them for weeks. The food that was intended for the Union Army. That is audacious. Totally audacious. One of Mosby's maxims was, the enemy has to protect 100 points. I need to find one weak spot. Now, where do you think that might apply? Anybody ever been to Vietnam? How about Iraq? We have to protect 100 points. They find one weak spot. John Mosby. And the other thing, of course, you probably got this from what Munson said. Mosby was loyal to his men, to a fault. He wouldn't ask his men to do anything he wouldn't do himself, or had already done himself a million times. Okay? I mentioned earlier that I want to get into some important experiences that kind of made Mosby into Mosby. I mentioned earlier that he was sickly as a child. He also learned to read, about how he was drawn to the life of Marion. His parents had slaves. They had a father, mother, son, and daughter. And I believe the son, the male slave, was older than Mosby, and the Mosbys gave Aaron, his name was Aaron, gave Aaron to John as a manservant in Richmond in 1861 when his militia company was mustered into Confederate service as one of the companies in the 1st Virginia Cavalry. Mosby also had some definite strong feelings about alcohol. He was, as a boy, he went home one too many times from school and told his mother that the teacher had been asleep in the yard when he went back after lunch. Of course, his mother knew the man wasn't sleeping. He was drunk. And Mosby was very strong. He was a teetotaler himself, would not allow his men, any of his men came to duty drunk, they were done. He would send them back to the infantry or the cavalry that day. Wherever they were from, they were going back there. He would not tolerate it. This is not to say some of them didn't drink. It's just that if he ever found out about it, they were toast. He shot a boy when he was at the University of Virginia. He went to UVA at age 16 in 1850. And in his junior year, there was a bully on campus. So they had a disagreement over who was going to be the fiddlers to play at whose party on a certain night. Mosby had asked the fiddlers first, and this other boy named George Turpin didn't want that to happen. He wanted the fiddlers to play at his party on the same night. Mosby wasn't going to let that happen. And in an argument between these two boys, Mosby had what was called a pepper-box pistol, a very crude little thing with a mouth about this big on it. And back in the old days, the earlier old models, if you pull a trigger, all the balls go off at the same time. There's no revolving cylinder. They just blew away. They're effective for about 15 feet. Anything over that, things are going wild. But he shot this kid point blank, 5 balls going off, and one of them hit him in the jaw. Just barely missed his carotid artery. Took out a couple of teeth. Now, Turpin was very seriously wounded, but he wasn't killed. Mosby was charged with an intent to murder, but he was convicted on the felony of malicious wounding, and convicted and sentenced by the court to a year in the Albemarle County Jail and given a $500 fine by the court. One thing that really hurt John Mosby was he had developed a very strong relationship with his professors at the university, and they at the university expelled him before he was even tried. And some of the people who voted to expel him were his own professors. This had really hurt him a lot. He had learned to read law while he was in prison. He borrowed law books from the prosecuting attorney, William Robertson, to pass the time, supposedly to pass the time. Turned out that he really enjoyed law, and when he got out of jail, he was again sick in the fall of